welcome to another episode of ELEV8 by Mdina Partners, today called Change Your Frequency, a conversation about driving change. I'm your host, Kat, and together with Steve, we definitely want to welcome our guest, Mr. James Munton. James is a special guest for us today because James is also our CEO of Mdina Partners UK. Welcome, James.
Good to be here.
And thank you for being here. I mean, again, you're in the bright sunny island, no complaints.
No complaints from me, no.
Definitely. So, James, I think I'd like to start from my favorite question, which was, what is your story and what has driven you to becoming what we're calling a change catalyst?
Yeah, of course. So my background, my story, the majority of my career to date has been spent working across security and defence through the UK civil service, principally for our Defence Department, the Ministry of Defence. And over that time, I had the opportunity to work on some of the most significant threats that our nation faced in modern times.
Wow.
With the focus of my career being, as you would imagine, war and terror. So pretty heavy subjects. But in amongst and sort of below those very heavy subjects, there was a lot of leadership, management, coaching, training, and the opportunity to step into some really large-scale change projects. Mm-hmm. And the more my career evolved, the more I had the chance to work on change initiatives, and they spanned people strategy, estates planning, as it was called then. This is office changes, building changes, and large-scale technology rollouts. So large-scale digital transformation. And the thing that piqued my curiosity as my experience grew in this space was the people element. It's always about the people. No matter the subject of the change initiative, I could never escape that even with a digital transformation, for example, it's not to say that there weren't some mind-bendingly talented software developers and business analysts doing really incredible things. But it was really clear to me that without great people driving initiatives and empowered people receiving those initiatives, that nothing was successful. So no matter how good this technology could be, without great people on both sides of that process and working together, it wouldn't land, it wouldn't go into business as usual, and the return wouldn't be enjoyed on all that energy and significant investment. And so over that time, I've sort of, shall we say, distilled my interest and focused more and more in the people space. And despite, even in the private sector and public sector, my career has always sort of sat at the nexus of technology and people. But I've always been obsessed with the people part and how I really believe it's the single greatest opportunity for any business to significantly and most positively turn the dials on accessing the opportunity that's ahead of us.
For sure. And I think you talking about it's all about the people is a really good reason why you are now part of our team.
Yeah, for sure.
Fits perfectly. But today the focus is change. So change is definitely increasingly on a CEO's agenda. Could you maybe give us a bit more intel on why, what's the significance of change management on a CEO's agenda, and more than anything, what's the impact to organizational success?
Yeah, of course. So I guess I'd approach that question with thinking, just why is it on the agenda? Why is it at the top of the agenda? Why are we still talking about it? If I said to either of you, have you heard phrases like, change is inevitable, change is constant, the pace is always increasing? Of course, we all recognise that. We've heard it for years and years and years. In the 1700s, Benjamin Franklin said, when you finish changing, you're finished. So we know that there is the need to adapt is nothing new, right? We know that's been a persistent challenge forever. So why now? 13 years ago, I was in Malta for the BLM conference focused on change. We were talking about it then, right?
We were.
And so yet here today, in 2024, it's dominating agendas. How are organisations going to adapt and evolve into the future? And I would say it comes down to the single point, that's pace. But not just pace of change now, but relentless pace. If we take the last few years, for example, and everything that's been on our collective desk for that time, we're talking about the global pandemic, post-global pandemic world, and we all use the phrase the new normal, whatever that meant to all of us. we're talking about stubborn inflation, busted supply chains, geopolitical instability. These are all things that either directly or inadvertently are challenging our clients and organizations more broadly. And any one in isolation would be enough to derail a leadership group's agenda, but taken together would really point to the fact that we're in one of the most challenging operating environments we've known in recent times.
True.
So that's what's driving the need for change, because we're in a very interesting period of time. But optimistically, I would position it that we're also in a period of significant opportunity, because I really believe that with change, opportunity exists. So the challenge for business leaders is to meet what's called the opportunity gap. It's the difference between our ability as individuals and modern organizations to evolve and adapt with change versus the rate of change that's driven by external events. The difference between the two and how we can close that gap and step into it is the challenge that I think, it's a nice challenge that we're all up for, but understanding how we can turn the dials on that positively is really what's keeping this on the to-do list for CEOs.
Definitely. I'm curious, Steve, in your career, change being the only constant, have you seen a difference in the pace of change, in the amount of changes?
Just before I answer that specific question, James referred to this conference. He went to Change Your Frequency, I think it was called, for the Business Leaders Conference. And how many years ago did you say?
13, I think.
13 years ago, yes, okay. And the presentation I gave at that conference was around that, sadly, even all those years ago, I was old enough to experience the introduction of the mobile phone. And I told the story about how I was sitting on the tube and I was observing these people carrying these almost box-like phones, bumping into each other. And thinking at the time, my God, this is so stupid. Why do people need this? Surely nothing is that important. Even the President of the United States must have some time where
he doesn't need to receive a call.
Yep.
Wow.
And then, of course, fast track. Then within a 2 or 3 year period of me buying one of these, carrying one of these around. Then,
panicking if it's not charged for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and there I was then one day driving to the airport to actually fly from England to Malta, and I'd forgotten my mobile phone.
Wow.
And had to make a decision, which I did, which was to either turn back, risk missing the flight, or actually fly to Malta, where I was staying only for 4 or 5 days without a mobile phone. And that was no decision, really. I turned the car around and took the risk of missing the flight. So when you see that speed of change for me, from thinking this was such a ridiculous idea, some 3 or 4 years later, to feeling I couldn't survive without a phone. So, and now here I sit at the time of my life I am. I feel that change is going even faster.
Okay. So it really concurs with you.
That's with the excitement of technology that's involved with it. So we've got this technology that enables us to have these opportunities of change, which is not frightening. I think we should actually just welcome this and have the people around us that know how to capitalize on these opportunities.
Yeah, brilliant. I think this is a really valuable point. So the pace.
Hence the arrival of this man.
Excellent. So James, what is the single most important factor for successfully driving change within an organization?
That's a good question. And there's probably a few ways to approach this, but if I'm to pin it to one, which you're going to make me, aren't you?
I am.
You're going to make me. If I'm to pin it to one, I'd have to say effective leadership. It sounds obvious, right? But I've described that as a cohesive leadership team at the top. Without that, we know from research of dysfunctional teams, we know that without that, you can't have any kind of well-functioning or high-performing team or organization. You need buy-in at the top, you need togetherness, you need cohesion. Without that, some change initiative happening further down the rungs just won't get the buy-in, it won't be successful, and it'll only add up to a waste of time and resource.
So change is often, as much as it is the only constant, still received with lots of resistance. What strategies do you see are best employed to overcome the resistance and really foster a culture of change being embraced, if possible?
Yeah, well, that is a great question. There's a lot of writing and thinking done around this very topic. And sure enough, we talked just at the beginning about how this change has been this constant challenge for as long as we can remember. So you can sure bet that resistance to change has equaled that. But I think before I probably answer on the sort of from the organisational perspective, I think it's really interesting to just step down into the individual and personal level. What happens to us as individuals when we're faced with change or the threat of uncertainty? Because human nature as such has been observed and researched for centuries.
Yeah.
But in the most recent decades, neuroscience or brain science is starting to give us a much closer look and a much deeper understanding at how our minds, brains, bodies are wired and what's specifically happening under these certain circumstances. And it's almost turbocharging our understanding of the change process at the individual level and then scaled up to the organisation. So in terms of resistance, if we think about the brain as this sort of prediction machine, constantly forecasting what it thinks is going to happen next and trying to then shape our realities around it. Of course, however, when our predictions are off or when the world around us changes unexpectedly or something happens unexpectedly, or think of a change initiative that you weren't sure was going to happen, it triggers the survive response in a human. And it's this survive response, this survive channel in our brains that is often significantly underestimated, certainly in a change process. It's a powerful driving force. As humans, this survive channel has kept us alive since the dawn of time. It's the reason that we exist still. And it's an incredibly powerful driving force. However, it's not that useful for leaning into change. But there are a lot of reasons why we as individuals can be pushed into this kind of survive mindset. It certainly comes from uncertainty, stress, anxiety caused by not being sure of the way forward or what's happening to us. But thankfully, John Cotto, who's really like the godfather of change management, helps to articulate this. We also access, available to us, a thrive mindset. This is where we get to lean into opportunity. It's characterized by feelings of passion and excitement and opportunity and possibility. But interestingly, there's tons of research with functional MRI scans which show that I believe that these two networks can't be firing at the same time. So when we get stuck in survive, this is really contra change. We want to seek to stabilize. There's lots of things that can push us there. So the challenge is that network works brilliantly. It's the thing that will have us recoil. We step out into a street to cross the road, and then we sense the cars coming, and we step back.
Yeah.
That's this ancient network in our brain functioning perfectly. And in a pure scenario, we then step back from that, and on we go. We stress levels reduce, and we continue. But a lot of change and uncertainty in modern life is quite complex, and we can't resolve it that easily. There's uncertainty in the economy. We get 24-hour news beamed in to our phones. We have all these different things, notifications, emails, change initiatives at work, a whole plethora of things that really can have us overheating in this survive space and being very stuck there. So organisationally then, what we really want is our people to be leaning more into this thrive mindset, more into the opportunity. So then there's a number of things that we can attempt to do to make that happen. Communication is always the big one. This is open, honest, genuine, transparent in all directions.
And as
The
often
good
as
and the
possible.
bad and the ugly.
Exactly. Yeah. Honest and transparent for sure.
Yeah.
But genuine. People have a fantastic radar, don't they, for when they feel like communication isn't genuine. And if it's not done in that sense, if it is truly disingenuous, you're actually going to push your people more into this survive, fearing change mindset. So communication. And then celebrating short-term wins in the change space. Now, this is something that's been talked about a lot in the change management space for years and years, but neuroscience is now backing up the principle of this.
Yeah.
This Thrive network, this Thrive mindset. Celebrating the short-term wins is like fuel for the engine of opportunity.
Yeah.
This is really what sort of fans the flames here and enables us to sustain the energy of the Thrive network, keep us leaning into opportunity and not have fear and uncertainty diminish that and have us retreat back to this kind of survive space. A really critical one, so we've talked about communication and celebrating short-term wins, just involvement. We know from research that nobody truly commits to decisions that they've not had the opportunity to weigh in on. This is really where we get into the space of people feeling like change is done to them.
Yeah.
And you're going to be dragging an anchor in this sense. Realistically speaking, if you just tell a group of people, this is what's happening, do it, you might get somewhere along the journey, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So involving people from the beginning through the process is absolutely critical. And again, honestly involving them. No false consultation where the decision's already been taken. And then we get into appropriate education and training. Some of the resistance to change will often just be around people fearing the unknown, for sure.
Not having the
and not having the skills. And in this case, I could be talking about, if I think about my digital transformation experience, this could just be people fearing that they don't understand how to use the new technology, which is a perfectly reasonable fear. Appropriate education and training can address that. All of a sudden, hang on, this isn't so scary. I can actually now see the benefit. I can see how this is going to make my life easier. I can see the opportunity. I'm now becoming an advocate for it. This is how we snowball. Without that, you've got blockers. And probably the final point in that list I'd point to would be coaching. That doesn't have to be one-to-one coaching. No, it could be, or group coaching. Where I've seen it really successfully done in large-scale change initiatives is where a coaching culture has been embedded within an organization. So this is by title, leaders and managers leading with a coaching culture, embedding that feedback loop.
Yeah.
And coaching, one of the reasons that it works is because it tends to push involvement to the coachees. It increases their levels of autonomy. It invites them into the situation, and you get this wonderful feedback loop, which is the complete opposite of just being told what to do. Yeah. So that coaching helps to nurse people through the process. It helps to involve people in what's happening in their day-to-day working life, and massively increases engagement. So that could be a huge cultural shift that can really benefit organizations at the sort of DNA level in being able to handle rapid and large-scale change.
Yeah, brilliant, and embracing it.
For sure.
Okay, now you're also, in my mind, the tech guy. What key role do you think technology really plays when it comes to, driving and managing change within organizations?
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'd be remiss not to just jump straight in with AI here, the sort of subject of the last many months, really now, I suppose, month on month, we keep hearing about it. It's not going away. I wouldn't claim to be a tech guy, though I've always worked with tech people and been very close to it, which I suppose is why I've landed on the people side. But look, just focusing on AI, and much like you said at the beginning, I'm an optimist. I think, for me, I'm not one of these people that says, I've used ChatGPT, it had mediocre output, therefore it's rubbish. Thank you very much, I'm done. Look, when you see the pace at which it's advanced in recent times is like nothing else that's ever happened. If you look at the output from AI and what's being achieved with it today compared to even 6 months ago, the change is phenomenal. So the future is going to be dominated by what we do with this technology. And I'm really clear that this doesn't mean replacement for people. I'm very optimistic about the fact that this means augmenting.
Facilitation.
Yeah, exactly. Augmenting the abilities of people. It means a significant amount of automation of menial and repetitive tasks to hopefully free people up to do higher value tasks. It's going to mean for data focused businesses a greater ability to drive insights into their business with data analytics, predictive analytics, and it's also going to drive faster innovation through AI's ability to rapidly iterate and experiment with the challenges that are on the desk of the day.
So you think it's going to speed up the change process?
It's going to speed up change. It's going to be the reason that we change, and it's going to drive change. It's going to speed up the change itself, for sure.
How exciting!
And absolutely, because I think we agree there's opportunity in that, right? If we lean into this and explore it and embrace it, there is going to be opportunity in it. Of course, it feels unknown. It feels unknown to all of us right now. It just feels like this thing that's approaching, and everyone's trying to make sense of it.
The mystique of it.
Of course, there's a significant recognition of its capability, but also then, in the governance and compliance space, people are saying this is fantastic, but there's a whole heap of stuff that we need to work out here. Certainly in the financial services industry, the legal space. The final thing, I suppose, the point I would make in terms of the change that this is going to enable or drive, which is really to pin it to workforce transformation, because I think it's fundamentally going to shape the workforce, reshape the workforce. But again, in an optimistic view, not pointing to your experience too much, Steve, but you'd also remember sort of commercially, entrepreneurially, the dawn of the internet. It was another period of time where everybody predicted the downfall of the modern organisation, that it was going to be the end, that we'd all just exist working on computers. But what did it actually do? It spawned new organisations, new industries, new job roles. It's added trillions of pounds worth of trade to the global economy ever since.
I actually remember being in a meeting with a client that was actually explaining to the senior management team that they are about to invest and install, therefore, the first computer in the company. Okay. And sadly, this client hadn't managed or planned the change process very well, because they just literally announced it full of excitement, the directors who'd spent 2 years planning this.
Wow.
And just threw it at these managers, expecting them to be as excited as they were, And this computer, by the way, filled a whole room in this place. It was this new, this is how far back I'm going. And they had to spend a lot of time taking people from that denial stage right through to being committed to this, which took them at that time years, 2 or 3 years.
Nice. And a great point about involving staff as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so bringing it all together today, change can be disruptive, but is the only constant. How do organizations kind of balance between that need for innovation, because or else you die, and that need for adaptation, but also then kind of taking care of their employees in the need for stability and also kind of the needs to stabilize, to be able to run an operation effectively at the end of the day? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, great question, and one that we always run into. So really, save for being, a 1 or 2 person or very small sort of startup that's super agile, that can kind of flex in one direction or another at their own will. Most established organizations don't feel like that, and therefore often move towards having more formal structures, and of course recognize the need to change and adapt into the future, but meet that challenge of how. So I mentioned John Cotter before, and I'll try and not make this too much of an academic deep dive, but he has a really famous model for this that addresses this exact challenge, and it's his dual operating system. And the dual operating system recognizes the need for the traditional hierarchy, which is the modern organisation as we know it. And this is characterised by the stability, the efficiency, the process, procedure and formal reporting chains. But within that, alongside it or dispersed within it, is the change network.
Okay.
The change network is characterised by adaptability, collaboration, responsiveness, and that drive and desire for change and commitment to seeking the opportunity. And in building that structure, you have the network that's obviously driving the change initiative. You have the traditional hierarchy, which is maintaining the stability. Kotter himself says, look, you need that. Ultimately, it's often the traditional hierarchy, which is taking care of the bottom line and making sure there's money to be reinvested in the change initiatives and to move into the future. But it balances the need for stability versus the imperative for change. So from a model perspective, from a sort of change management textbook perspective, and my own experience, not just talking from the textbook as such, but it's a model that I've seen used successfully in really large-scale change projects.
Okay.
So I would advocate for that, and it certainly addresses those two needs. But I think, look, all change as an individual or an organisation is a leap into the dark. But I think I bring it back to the final point that Kotter makes within that. It's all very well having a model. It's all very well saying there's a traditional hierarchy and a change network. But it comes back to my initial point about effective leadership, because he recognises that without effective, dedicated, focused leadership that's bought into it, that's fully supportive of both the traditional hierarchy and the change network, nothing happens. Nothing happens. The change initiative will not succeed. And as you said, it dies. So it can feel like a leap into the dark. But if you have the buy-in from effective leadership and you don't give in to the fear of what change can bring, then we have the opportunity. We have the opportunity to find out what we can achieve, to unlock our potential.
Yeah. Excellent. Steve, any more closing remarks?
No, I don't think so. I think if there's anything that to reflect upon from what we've heard is that change actually should be linked to the whole, to being positive.
Yes.
It shouldn't be something we fear or try and fight against or move away from. We should encourage it.
And be curious.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay. I think on that tone, I'm happy to close off. Thank you for coming here. I mean, it was painful to be in the sunny island, I can understand. So
Terrible.
Thank you for being here with us
My
today.
pleasure.
We're sorry we took you away from the beach. And thank you to the listeners who have been with us today. We hope you join us for another episode next month. If you enjoyed this, please stay subscribed. We truly believe the journey to success is even better when shared. Thank you and take care.